The Job by Maggie Veness. I arrive home one afternoon to find my 80-year-old father using a spatula to scrape the green velveteen paper off one of the walls in the lounge. I can hardly believe my eyes. He's just spent the entire winter grieving for Mum, barely eating or speaking, cocooned inside bedding that had come to smell like a tired old creek. Not sure if my presence has registered, I kick off my tan espadrilles and watch, fascinated, as he works the spatula in tiny, measured strokes. Mum had fought him for 50-odd years to keep this god-awful wallpaper. The exertion has him puffing, and his flaccid tongue is dangling over his lip like a thirsty old dog's. "How's it going, Dad?" I ask.
Yeah, not bad. It might take a while to finish the job, though. Oh, you know, son, no woman's ever going to move in here with you while this rubbish is stuck on the blooming walls.
You reckon? I'm not sure I'm looking for someone else just yet, but I'll definitely keep that in mind. Hey, would you say I'd grab us a nice cold beer?
I thought you'd never ask. We're needing the ute tomorrow, Arvo, too. Moon's about right to catch a fish. Got today's paper. I need to check the tides.
First thing next morning, I pull back the blinds and spot Dad on his haunches in the driveway, cranky fingers preparing his tackle. I pull on some jocks and wander out to join him, my winter white skin prickling under the early rays. I'm curious to see that he's chosen a slower action rod, about 2 metres, an 8-kilo line and a stiffer, heavier reel. From what he's taught me over the years, he's chasing some pretty big fish. Yeah, he's definitely lost condition. Looks like he's shrunk by several centimetres. Yet here he is after months holed up in bed, suddenly back wearing his signature floppy-rimmed grey fishing hat and blue checked flannel shirt, as though the past 6 months had never happened. While I'm torn about whether I should be trying to discourage him, the minute he asks, I throw in some clothes and ride the old Kawasaki to the local fish and tackle store to grab him a bag of live worms. By the time I get back, Dad's got all his gear loaded into the back of the ute and he's recovering in one of the faded canvas deck chairs on the veranda. Once again, I'm struck by how frail he looks. It's been a while since we fished together, Dad. What about some company down the beach later on?
No.
Oh. Well, how about you just let me drive you and I'll give you...
Don't need babysitting.
Yeah. Maybe he meant a few words, but when he crosses his arms and shuts his eyes, I know better than to insist. I've come to realise that it's the tiny things, the slow tap of his index finger, the hint of a nod, the knowing look that follows you way after you've left the room, that make him who he is. Inconspicuous, yet formidable. It's mid-afternoon when Dad hoists himself into the driver's seat, his eyes barely clearing the steering wheel. I take no refuge in the knowledge that while he hasn't bothered packing any food, he has grabbed a bottle of black label Johnny Walker that he's been hanging on to for the last year or two. I sidle up to the open passenger side window just as he turns the key. So, what's with the whiskey?
Yeah, the wind will blow up later. Warm the old bones. Don't be worrying about me, you hear?
I watch him set off down the road, and after the ute disappears, I head straight inside and call Frank, my younger brother. Frank lives an hour up the coast, and his second wife, Penny, live in a renovated bungalow. After sharing my concerns, Frank says that when a retired fisherman suddenly hankers to go fishing again, it's a positive sign. Tells me I'm overreacting. After we decide that Team Dad will assemble for a barbecue at the foreshores this Sunday at noon, we hang up. Meantime, of course, it's newly divorced me who'll continue to keep a close eye on him. Who needs a social life, right? A couple of hours later, I'm standing at the open kitchen window, imagining Dad's spindly legs, straining to hold them upright against a freshening easterly wind. I ponder his abrupt recuperation. Find myself combing back over today's conversations. Nothing about the previous 24 hours is sitting right with me. Not his sudden recovery, not his uncharacteristic refusal of a fishing buddy, and definitely not his companion bottle of whiskey. And the more I think about it, the more I begin to believe that I'd caught a hint of bluff in his voice. Outside, the easterly carries the squawk of seagulls, and I watch as it lifts the sheet of tin covering the old compost bin. All the inconsistencies collect in my gut like metal filings to a magnet. A strong gust sends Dad's fishing hat tumbling across the driveway, and a cold sweat sweeps across my body. With Dad's hat stuffed down inside my t-shirt, I kickstart the Kawasaki and head toward the beach. Knowing he is always prepared, always preferred to fish from the rocks, my best guess is that he's chosen a spot along his favourite kilometre of coast. It's not long before I come across the ute. I park the bike nearby and start walking. There are two huge rocky basalt outcrops to the south, and we fished together many times from both. There's no sign of them after 20 minutes, and twilight beginning to fade on the horizon. I pick up the pace. By the time I get to the second lot of rocks, my guts are churning. It's Dad's tackle box I see first. When he doesn't answer my calls, my mind spins out and away like line running off a fishing reel. I strain my eyes and keep searching. By this time, stumbling over rocks in the fading light. When I find the half-empty bottle of whiskey, my throat tightens. I drop straight down like a crab, feeling my way in a fast semi-crawl towards the first cluster of small rock pools. It's here I spot my father lying face down in about a foot of water. And the cold slaps me like an open freezer door. I haul him out, sit down, cradle the soggy bag of bones. In my arms, my father feels as small as a 10-year-old. He stares up at me, his eyes wide and glazed, his mouth emptying of seawater, like one of his precious catch. Suddenly I'm howling into the salt-laced wind. Eventually I retrieve Dad's hat from inside my t-shirt, pull it down onto his head and carry him back. It's 2 hours before I've finished with the cops, and when I eventually arrive home, I can't seem to stop shivering. I know it's high time I told my brother, but Well, this isn't the kind of news you deliver by phone. Numb, I prop myself up beneath a steaming hot shower. 20 minutes later, I'm heading up the highway in the ute. I arrive at Frank and Penny's just after 11. The second they see me standing on the doorstep, struggling to speak, they know Dad's gone. To close my watery eyes and let the words play out like I'm talking my way through the plot of a silent movie. Back home, in the early hours, I find myself standing in the centre of the lounge room, swigging straight from the dusty bottle of Mum's Xmas cake sherry. My guts are on fire, but it's a good fire. And as the room begins to tilt, I feel time turn back. Hours, days, years. I sense my father's presence within this house. Minimal, yet powerful. A life preserved in echoes. And I raise the bottle, and I smile, and I say aloud, "Here's to you, Dad, the man who believed ugly wallpaper was bad for your love life." After I've been glued to the floor for God knows how long, it turns out it's the ideal time to pick up the spatula, lift it, and finish the job.